if we can get everybody's attention, please, we're going to get this started. My name is JP Espinosa. I'm the board chair. We've also got Brendan, Cliff, and Nate. We're missing.
I just talked to Rick. He'll wait till he's not going to make it. But he supports weed and all your
All right,
send a message along.
Yeah, so Rick and Andy are the two missing board members today. We're here today for an informational meeting about marijuana, medical marijuana, an ordinance that the board has crafted. And before we get into the details of it, I just want to kind of give an overview of this process to remind everybody where we're at and how it works. So the planning board has taken it upon itself to draft an ordinance, and this is not ordinance, like this is not law. This is a draft that we've come up with to present to the selectmen, and the selectmen will in turn hold a special town vote. Now, the citizens of Parsonsfield will take this draft, and if you guys would like a copy, there's some on the one of the desks up there, or rather, go around and pass them out. They'll take this draft, or the finalized draft that we present them, put it before the townspeople for a vote. It's going to be 6 or 7 separate articles, which will go before the townspeople for a vote. Now, if the vote is yes or in favor of that specific article, then the land use will follow as approved, and that one section, as an example, medical marijuana retail store or a testing facility or a manufacturing facility, that one article, if approved, will be allowed in the town. You can look at article number 1, municipal authorization is needed. Authorize registered caregivers, retail stores, registered dispensaries, testing facilities, manufacturers that are not operating on the effective date of this section to operate in the municipality unless the municipal legislative body, defined in Title 30A, Section 2001, Subsection 9, has voted to adopt or amend an ordinance or approve a warrant article allowing registered caregiver shops, retail dispensaries, or registered dispensaries, marijuana testing facilities, or manufacturing facilities that's applicable to operate within the municipality. So what that means, that big long paragraph, means we as a town have to vote whether to allow these entities to operate within the town of Parsonsfield. Okay, and what we've done as the planning board is suggested that we separate each one of these into a separate article, and we're asking the town people, do you want this to be allowed within the town? Now, we've also gone above just that simple question and made recommendations as to where in the town that these should be allowed. And by allowed, I mean either permitted, requiring a site plan review, or a special exemption permit. I'm not sure. Yeah, we still have that in a couple of weeks. So those are just varying degrees of scrutiny that an applicant will receive before being allowed to open up business in a particular zone. Lindsay is both our secretary and now the deputy clerk, and I'm gonna have her explain how it goes from this piece of paper before you guys to the town vote.
So I'll try to explain it pretty clearly. The planning board accepts the duty of drafting this ordinance. They have to come together as a board at their next meeting and vote on the final version of this so it becomes official. Then they can move forward with setting up a public hearing and have more public input on it. And if everybody is fine with the way it's drafted, it'll go to the select board. And the select board will set a date for a special town meeting for town vote.
Is that just a question? I was on it, and then for those of you who were at the last meeting, we were trying to make this our public hearing, but because this is a new ordinance, it's a different process. it's my understanding that we have to vote on it, submit it to the board. They pick a, select board, they pick a date for the vote, and then we schedule a public hearing within 10 days of that.
Well, in that initial email, I kind of had that wrong.
Okay.
So you guys can schedule,
Okay.
you'll have to vote on this.
Once we
finally.
vote on it, we can schedule a public hearing.
Then you can do a public hearing.
Another point, my understanding, and I believe, that this is a workshop, which means that you, the public, can scrutinize each one of them and make comments, changes, suggestions, and we have about 2 hours to kind of go through this, and if there are other changes that you would like to see, it gets more difficult, so it's probably a good idea to review this as best we can while we're here for the next 2 hours or so. And any changes or things you want, or questions you have, let's try to clarify that, because we need your input. We came up with a draft of a possible final document, but the people that showed up here for this workshop have a lot of power. Does everybody understand that? Okay.
But it's our intent to vote on something on Wednesday, so that we can move forward to the finals.
And all of this process is clearly defined in, what is it, the deputy clerk?
Well, it's defined in our ordinance,
Okay.
and also the MMA Deputy Clerk's Manual.
Okay. And we as a board have been forwarded the manual as reference, so that's available for FOIA request if you guys would like through the deputy clerk's office, and this is a learning process for all of us, because this is our first time as a board drafting and submitting any ordinance to the town. So I appreciate everyone's patience as we go through this. So does anyone have any questions about the process of the ordinance and becoming a votable item for the townspeople? Okay, good. All right, we'll go into the details next. Now, just to give a general idea of how this I guess informational meeting will go, we're gonna talk a little bit about some stuff that we, as a board, decided to reach out for resources amongst us, and then we're going to open it up for public comments, public questions, concerns, and we want open and honest feedback as much as possible. I'm not going to do a time limit because we don't have a whole bunch of people here, but I will ask that you be respectful and don't filibuster someone's morning that also wants to ask a question or comment. So keep your agenda, or not agenda, your conversations on point, on topic of what you're talking about, please. As a final thing, myself and I don't know if any of the board members will be available after this informational meeting to kind of clarify any questions that you might not want to ask in front of you. At least I'll be around for a while. Any questions, comments, concerns about that? Okay, the one thing I will ask is when and if you are called upon, please state your name for the record, loud enough for the video camera or the audio to pick it up, and your place of residence. By place of residence, I mean town. Just want to make sure that the citizens of Parsonsville get their chance to ask questions. So, all right. So the first thing is, so this thing that you guys have in front of you, we as a board have had a series of workshops, and we've discussed primarily separating it into separate articles of like retail stores, testing, manufacturing, different classes of manufacturing, and then we have made suggestions as to where these practices or facilities should be allowed in which zones. Now, if you get to the small table, the Excel table, in the middle of page 1, you can see use structure, commercial, and then what it is. an accessory structure for medical marijuana retail stores. Now we have this great map up here which shows all the zones of Parsons Field. And you've got definitions on this form to tell you which is which. If you guys at any time would like to come up, take a look at the map, and see what we're talking about, I encourage you to, because it gives you a visual representation of where these businesses could possibly go. Now, Village is the dark pink, the Village Residential is light pink, Rural Residential is the tan color, Farm and Forest is green, and then Light Industrial is the two tiny blue sections that we have over there. One thing of note, we actually have two village districts in the town of Parsons Field. Not only Keyser Falls, but East Parsons Field, the area surrounding the post office, is classified as village. And then we've got Village Residential scattered around the town as well. So what we've done is we've asked ourselves the question, where will these businesses best fit in the town, if allowed? Our consensus is the results that you see in front of you. And you can go through each one and take a look at what our recommendations are. Now, one of the questions, if you go to Article 7, and this is still not the finalized version, but we wanted to put to public question and comment after speaking with the Maine Municipal Authority, who is the overarching legal and regulation, what's that?
Insurance, basically.
Yeah, insurance for towns writing ordinances. I asked them, get that email? Right there, okay. I asked them a series of questions. One of the things that we were discussing we're not 100% on including into this medical marijuana portion is cultivation facilities. So the question to MMA was, do state laws preclude or allow zoning of medical marijuana cultivation? And if so, does our draft meet any of those stipulations? The answer back is, unlike the adult use marijuana law, the medical marijuana law does not directly address cultivation as a separate activity. We think the legislator likely thought the caregivers of dispensaries had an implied right to cultivate medical marijuana, which makes sense. However, it does not appear that medical marijuana manufacturers or testing facilities have the right to cultivate. These would need to be registered caregivers or a dispensary to cultivate. So, MMA is basically saying that out of the, I'll get you questions. Out of the things that we've broken it down to, that dispensaries and registered caregivers are the people who are allowed to cultivate. New dispensaries, new medical marijuana manufacturers or testing facilities, or medical marijuana caregiver retail stores are prohibited since 12/13/2018 unless the town's body opts in to allow them. There is no opt-in and no ability to prevent caregivers generally, and I don't think you can prohibit cultivation that's part of your caregiver's activities, which makes sense, and that's what we've discussed as a board. So it goes on to say, from a purely zoning perspective, the town has general home rule authority to create reasonable land use regulations addressing cultivation facilities generally, including marijuana cultivation, particularly cultivation that is carried in a freestanding building. Now, and I think that's the point that we were discussing, was freestanding buildings, separate facilities to cultivate. And the concern for some of the board members is we don't want like the Monsanto of weed to come in, throw up like 30 greenhouses, and that strictly be their presence. You know, that's a little bit different than a caregiver cultivating products for their patients. It's a little bit different from a registered dispensary cultivating products to dispense. You know, that's taking it on a bigger scale. So that's why it's still included in here and it's up for discussion today. It also, I'm sorry?
Okay, so they're fine before facts come out in our check.
Yeah, you'll have a chance. We just finished the email.
Right.
Thank you. All right. So I believe there may be some municipalities that have attempted to regulate some aspects of medical marijuana cultivation under a land use or zoning ordinance. Since this area is unclear, we would want to work closely with the town's attorney to determine what town is comfortable doing through land use ordinance. Medical marijuana law does allow a town to regulate caregivers and their activities as long as the town does not prohibit non-retail caregivers entirely. Then it's got a reference here. So we took that, and then reached out to Southern Maine Planning and Development, an ordinance helping guy, I guess I call him. He's the director of planning, DJ Feldman. And he reviewed everything, and we can go to his stuff next, but I understand there's some comments and questions. Just go for it. Well, okay, Alan?
Yeah, Will Parsonsfield. We finished out our last meeting with a certain set of things. It appears that there has been conversation and further work done since that meeting, between then and now, which we weren't part to. Also, EJ is a person that we pretty much as a town and as a planning board underneath the Dollar General completely shunned and said we could never work with again. Also, MMA is an insurance type thing, but they are a recommendation. And the recommendations that you just read are to keep your hands off of caregiver rights, like every other town that has gone down this way. So I'm a little confused at how now all of a sudden Article 7 has been generated onto this list, when I even asked and Nate told me there had been no more work done on it, and that this was exactly the same thing we had just worked on the previous workshop meeting on the same day.
So at the end of the meeting, we had made a declaration that we were going to reach out to MMA to get guidance regarding cultivations.
Right, but not real about it.
Well, all that was done was take what we had. I have it here and I crossed it out, but it was in progress. So all we're saying is we're going to discuss this again because we did reach out, we did get clarification. So,
but the clarification seems pretty clear. That you're not discussing interfere with non-retail caregivers, and this is cultivation is completely separate from caregiving. That's why there's this section. So what you're talking about is a complete misnomer. Like, it's not accurate. When people grow, they are just caregivers. When you apply to get a shop, you are applying for that shop in that location. You're not saying that you're growing in the shop. If you wanted to carry out your grow as a caregiver, you are still completely allowed to do that. It is separate from it. That's why it says, do not interfere with non-retail caregivers. Like, I don't understand why we're even still here, or why the board seems to be trying to restrict the ability for people in an agrarian town to move forward with a cash crop. And the idea that Monsanto is going to come in here means that you haven't done the research. There is a plant limit. You can't do that unless you're a registered dispensary, which is already addressed. So the idea of trying to cut down caregivers and do 30 plants for their card because you think they're going to turn into Monsanto is kind of a veil. It's not a real fake veil either. It's just simply coming after caregivers. That's what Article 7 is. And no one in any of these meetings has ever voiced any want for that. So, yet here we are finding out emails to Southern Planning, to Lee J, someone who's been a huge enemy of this town, enormous enemy of this town, that we have simply come through 1,000 times and said, we are never going to work with this guy again. We're now taking Lee J and MMA, another group that we've had issues with in the past, that the board has seemed to go around and find a different entity to work with in the past. Between the last workshop and now, we decided to put our cards in them and then throw out something that disenfranchises the people in this town from cultivating as an option. After we talked about this and the S not being involved, yet now I'm seeing 1,000 square feet require an S. Where was the conversation for that? Was it ex parte? Because it seems like it was ex parte. Any communication on that point right there would be ex parte.
Okay, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. So, 1 second. So we're not talking about limiting caregivers' rights to cultivate at all. We're talking about specifically zoning issues of freestanding structures. So that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about putting any restrictions on allowing caregivers to cultivate. We're talking about accessory buildings.
It says 1,000 square feet is one restriction right here, utilizing
The building itself. Any structure utilized or built for cultivation facility less than 1,000 square feet. Now, this is a working draft. This is not a finalized draft, and we're here today to discuss all of these. So your comments will definitely be taken into
The
consideration.
explanatory note says nothing about accessory structures. It very generally targets caregivers. It says nothing about that, and in fact, it does limit and requires us to go ahead and divulge our financial of like life and everything else that's involved in a special exception permit because we're over 1,000 square feet, arbitrary number, of which the board has no idea of whether or not it's even acceptable or if it's even applicable. Those are limits, and they're right here, and it says nothing about an accessory structure. So what I'm saying is stop the nonsense. Let's talk about what's on this paper, whether it's working draft or not. This got generated, was going to be put forward, unless I say something about it here in the town. What, was going to get pushed on to the next meeting and then stamped with approval? Unacceptable.
So, what are the next question? Yes, sir.
Okay, you can't take anything Maine Municipal says. It's truth. Because when we did this, we had the problem with the sewage sludge they wanted to bring here. They said that we could not do anything to stop it. There was no way. And it turned out that we could easily stop it. They lied to us. They're a bunch of lying scumbags, Maine Municipal. That's proven fact. And then when he just said something about 1,000 square feet and all that, a standard greenhouse is 30 by 100. That's the standard unit for efficiency and all that. For anybody trying to do anything, rotating greenhouse tomatoes and marijuana to control whiteflies or anything, it's 30 feet by 100, not 1,000 square feet.
So that's what, 33,000 square feet?
Yeah, whatever it is.
Okay.
30 by 100 is a standard unit. That's what they make them.
No, he's
All right, now?
our building. Now it's the park. Out front. You guys want to
I'm sorry, we can't hear people asking questions.
Are you guys gonna make that email available to the public?
Which one?
Will require.
Yeah.
That email that you
Yeah.
just read off.
All emails,
It's
you
a
can
lot.
go through the FOIA request and we can get them with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just think that should be public record.
It is.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, that's why it's being discussed here and you requested for FOIA.
Okay, yeah. Is there copies available currently or no?
No, you're gonna have to go through the FOIA person because
Just
I've been chastised for handing
email
out stuff.
the town clerk,
Okay.
and say you want the
Make sure you
FOIA
follow FOIAs
information.
don't get pushed through here.
Thank you.
Mary?
Marion Wright, Parsonsfield. You list accessory structure in Article 7, but you don't have anything in there. Everything
It's
is just for medical marijuana cultivation facilities. That line separates it.
right, because we're talking about specifically a separate.
Right,
accessory
but why
structure.
list accessory structures if you're not going to deal with them?
So they're all listed as accessory structures. We're talking about,
Well, look at page, they don't do by page. Article 7. Use structure, commercial.
right?
It says accessory structure,
These ones.
and it's a separate item of its own,
What?
and has nothing for village residential, any of that.
Right.
That's the way you have it set up.
If you also look at Article 2, Article 3, Article 4, Article 5, Article 6, they're all listed like that. We're talking specifically about a structure devoted to those activities.
Then there shouldn't be a line between accessory structure and what you're actually talking about.
Okay.
I got a few more. In They're little things, like you do not, when you have an R with a star, you started off putting them in the legend, but then when you're using them later on, you do not put the R and the star in the legend. I can give you examples.
Sure.
Article 4. No. Like, Article 5.
Okay.
It's not in the legend. It's not listed.
Yeah, it's right below the,
Where?
right under the medical marijuana testing manufacturing with the village,
Yeah.
our VR, and underneath the table, directly underneath it.
I just don't like where it is. It
Okay.
should be in the legend, as far as I'm concerned. That's me.
Sure.
I can go back to Article 3 and ask about light industrial as a C, and ask why.
One of you guys want to take that? Or we can just go? For retail dispensaries?
Yeah, in light industrial.
Any good?
That's the only place commercial, that,
I'm not sure.
Okay.
the only place that
Yeah,
commercial allows it, and you don't. I don't get it.
Yeah, I think that article is it's per se, but we talked about retail store. I don't have a recollection of really talking about this.
Right.
I thought we were kind of
Meshing them together.
together, but.
Yeah.
no, I think that.
So do you guys want to change that to an R?
Yeah, I thought that's what we had as.
Okay. We'll put it in there. I was going off the minutes. Yeah, so for Article 3, light industrial, it will be changed from C to use requires site plan review permit. Do you have anything more questions or comments, Mary?
So you're changing it from C to what?
R?
R. Thank you.
Was there anything else? Mary, I'm going to move on to the next question. We'll come back to you, okay?
Oh, no, I said it was done.
Oh, okay, all right. Yes, ma'am.
Carolyn from Field, this is just a foot of that Monsanto has been bought out by Bayer. They're bigger now. And they have a sweeter image. They're putting their other image behind.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Tom Yoder, Parsonsville. Did you just find a difference between a dispensary, I'm so confused, and a caregiver? I know a caregiver can have 6 patients. Dispensary is more of a retail. What's the fundamental difference there? It's more of a retail facility.
Yeah, actually, would a caregiver like to explain?
Sure. So actually, those are the old rules. I mean, LD 1539, a caregiver is entitled to 30 plants for his caregiving card. He could also ideally have 6 of his own medicinal if he was a patient or she, and 3 recreational, which anyone here would be entitled to. You're able to deal with as many patients as you wish to with that license, as long as they're a registered patient. So realistically, it really doesn't matter if someone has a retail shop or not, because of the fact that they're able to access these people. All we're doing by getting rid of retail shops is forcing them to have to do business out of their homes or drive around and do business. So that's kind of the difference. Does that help?
Well, yeah, but what about a dispensary?
The dispensary, like, so you have your registered dispensaries through the state.
Yep.
And then you have your caregiver retail stores, which are like that's
The retail stores and the caregivers, you have the same price, it's just the other store. It's easier to access the product.
exactly.
And so not, what's the number though? I think the other big difference isn't it how many people be in the store? Dispensary is not limited to one person at a time, is it?
Right, I think you're allowed to go into more, I never looked into it, I think it's just,
I think that would be the other big, we don't have any, very few dispensaries, so.
it's like 8.
Yeah, it's only 8. They're gonna be allowed in the state.
Yeah.
They're gonna allow more though.
I think it's like 12.
Phase in more with the total, yeah,
I think 12 over
then they're
5
gonna
years.
keep going up. So
Some sort of
it's a state licensed facility. And I do believe though, the biggest, ultimately probably the biggest difference functionally is that if you're a retail caregiver, I know we have caregivers in the room, example, if they open a store,
Yes.
you can't just, only one person can go in that store at a time.
I see.
So that's probably, I think, functionally the biggest difference.
Yeah.
Being the more,
As far as how.
You can go, more than one person can be in the store, but you can have a bathroom where you would take care of one person at a time within a certain time slot. So if you're selling glass or CBD products or just other products, they can still be in the store browsing, but if you're dealing with them one-on-one, they need to be in a separate place outside of the public.
And just for the video, say your name.
Sherry Batchelder, Newfield.
I mean, I think the new law basically opened it up so that, you know, in a way, short circuits, I think, the dispensary process.
Okay.
Ed Griggs, you've got Passfield. You've got light industrial as like some special thing where you can do all this stuff, it should be permitted and all that. Well, one of the dirty little secrets of this town is that the block shop has an asbestos cement pipeline going to it, not an iron pipeline. And people are going medical marijuana for people being treated for cancer, going through chemotherapy and stuff. The water there is polluted with all kinds of wood preservatives because they never really cleaned it up. They just pretended they did and took all the money. And so the water there, I mean, this doesn't make any sense. There's no reason why the block shop should be given preferential treatment for growing, for doing medical marijuana stuff, when if anything, it shouldn't be there because there's no clean water. That's a very important point. I mean, this whole thing is gibberish. And then, like, not allowing it in village residential, that means nobody in Taylor City is going to be able to access all that New Hampshire money driving right by them. We need some money in this town. Your job is supposed to bring some money into our farm economy, which has been heavily squeezed by the Nestle people. I mean, they're trying to squeeze, I mean, this has been going on for over 40 years now, cutting us off from markets and stuff. And right here, you're putting stuff in, cutting us off from a market, a major market, Route 153. I mean, there's people over there in Taylor City who are growing a little pot and selling it. They've been doing it for years, and they should be allowed to do it legally, properly, on the land that's been in their families for over 10 generations. And this here has village residential not permitted. It's insane.
And that's, you're talking about a retail store?
Retail store or anything like that. I mean, we're talking Taylor City. All that money flows by there. A little corner of Maine sticks out into New Hampshire.
You still have to have a medical card.
Hold on one second.
No, I mean down Taylor City on Route 153.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're suggesting that village residential be changed from a no
A no to a, whatever the other thing is, whatever it is.
I mean, okay. We can talk about it at the board.
Ed, where does the town water end on Sokoka Road?
I don't know.
Down's
but
house?
The
Couple
pipeline,
I can't hear you,
the pipe on Secocas Road was put in by the block shop, industrial blocks and lumber.
Oh, so you're saying the pipes are bad?
The pipe,
Okay.
when they put it in, they chipped. They didn't put in an iron pipe, they put in an asbestos cement pipe.
Oh, I know.
All right, let's So we'll definitely take that into account, discuss it here as a board. We'll move on to the next question, Mr. Ryan.
Yeah, I don't think I have the same idea. I would ask that this evidence is completely removed. The article is not important, it's not called for, it's not directly even addressed in the overarching law that is asking you to be an ordinance on. You went out and did work separately, to try to drag it out, and find a way to, like, very narrowly target. What I look at here is a straight target on an application that just went through here, that you have an additional exception on, something that you completely just botched. And now I'm finding that this negativity is bouncing into this ordinance, something that's going to affect everybody in this town, because you have an issue with one application that came through. You can go ahead and deny it, but when I see 1,000 feet or 1,000 square feet as the parameters, it's pretty clear that you're not interested in letting business develop here. Yet I hear constantly, as some sort of bastion of great freaking sense, that we're going to do local food sovereignty and have people able to access the goods around them. Meanwhile, I'm seeing you stripping the rights of people that are doing that already here for medicine, not food. So this is ridiculous. Number 7 shouldn't even be entertained. You brought it up and it doesn't need to be.
I can see that you're upset, sir. I do want to clarify that I understand that you're looking at this in a very
I'm looking at it this way.
In a very concerned aspect for your guys' application, and I will say that as a board, we're trying to be objective, not just view your application in all disorders. We're also looking at the other businesses and other uses of these structures that could possibly occur that.
Not your purview.
I'm sorry?
That's not your purview.
I think the board's purview is to be objective.
It's not your decision to decide whether or not a building could possibly have other business. It is your decision to take the input of this town and decide whether or not they think it could be a use at that structure. You do not have any authority to take in, it could be this shop. That's exactly the argument.
Listen, I'm not going to get into a big argument with you, but I want you to understand that the board's
private property
duty is not to write this
It's the
regulation.
liberties of the people that own the property to decide what could and
If
can't
you
go
would
in.
mind to write your own regulation, you can completely do so. You can go before a warrant, get a certain amount of signatures,
You give input,
presented
write what we
to
want.
the
That's
select
how it
board.
goes.
Yes,
You're a
we are
tool of the
receiving
town,
your input.
not the other way around.
We are receiving your input, and we're here today to discuss.
Are you? Because suddenly we have Article 7 when nobody has ever put anything in here asking you to limit cultivation. How is that using our input? Explain it.
Nobody put
Explain
anything in
it.
here other than us, completely. All of us.
Exactly. So how is that taking input from us and putting it in there? How is it doing it? Explain that now.
Explain what now?
How is Article 7 a reflection of anything this town has ever said in the long litany of the times that we've come here?
Right.
Explain that.
We've had concerned citizens come to the board.
Where?
Where? After our workshops.
Private conversation.
I'm sorry, sir. Would you like me to answer your question, or would you just
No,
like
I
me
want to
talk?
make sure that it's an actual answer. Private citizens after meetings, not on the record. Is that what you're saying? Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. That's in the record.
Right.
Go ahead, keep going.
Is that a problem?
Yes.
Why? Why is it a problem?
Because the work is supposed to be done in the public eye.
Everything should be done in public.
Everything is
It is a
done,
problem.
but listen, we are
Just like the
this
meetings
now.
over here with the select board that we talked about the last time.
Okay, well,
There's an issue.
all right. Anything else?
Yeah.
Keep going.
There's plenty. Well,
Let's use up all our time so you can go on a tirade.
it's 2 hours, and I'm giving you things that you're supposed to be taking and making work for this.
Right.
You're not doing it, that's the problem. You're the guys wasting people's time. And you wasted our time for months because you couldn't get it together. Or maybe we forgot about that.
Hold on a second. We don't want to waste anybody's time.
You did.
You're here.
Wasted months of our time.
You're here to help us.
No, I am, but somebody doesn't know how.
Just wait. You're here to help. Everybody here is to help us. So when we're looking at Article 7 and you were basically saying, just throw it out.
Yes.
How can you make Article 7 work for you and everybody else?
It's not anything that needs to be in there. It's literally told to not be addressed. It says, keep your hands off this. And we have somebody over here who goes in secret meetings with the select board and doesn't even ask your input about something. And then divides this thing up.
Well, you're basically saying that 1,000 square feet makes everything.
No limit on cultivation. We are caregivers. We're already authorized by the state. There's already a limit on size. It's 30 plants.
Gotcha. No, but you don't want to see any limit on cultivation, is that correct?
It's already a limit.
There is a limit.
30 plants.
So what's you say something about 1,000 square feet, what does that have to do with 30 plants?
Because that's the arbitrary number that someone decided to come up with outside of a meeting and throw into this votable item.
So how does 30 plants connect to 1,000?
I can answer a little bit. I know I'm not from Parsons Road, from Newfield, but I'm
No, that's
also
okay.
on the planning board there, so I'm trying to get information from my own town. I am a registered caregiver in Newfield with my husband, so we can legally do 60 plants per room if we wanted to. We do have a freestanding building in Newfield that's 2,600 square feet. We cannot even do our 60 per room because we do not have the space. We have about 32 per room. We have 600 square foot, 2 rooms, and just 600 square foot, because we need room for drying and processing, and we need a nursery. So limiting it to 1,000 square feet, maybe limit it,
So
but
what
1,000
you're saying
square.
is there's no connection between the number of plants and there's no reasonable connection between the number of plants that you need space for and 1,000 square feet. It doesn't, it doesn't.
I mean, 1,000 square feet is, you can't run a business in 1,000 square foot place.
So just a clarifying point though, I don't think this, in this article in itself, it doesn't say it's prohibited at all. It says
But
that it
it's
has
saying
to.
you're wanting to limit it to 1,000.
No. It's talking specifically about the review process for people to build or use freestanding structures.
Votable item.
I'm sorry, sir. You haven't been called on. So we're talking specifically, just like in every other accessory structure, of an application going before the town planning board to be reviewed to make sure that it's in the best interest of the town for that accessory structure to be used for that purpose. Now, there are two varying levels of scrutiny that would happen between a site plan review and a special exemption permit, because special exemption permits are making sure that this practice can't be done anywhere else. It makes feasible sense for it to be done in that exact location. So no one is saying like it has to be prohibited at all. I'm going to call Alex behind you.
Alex Marstonfield, thanks, JP. I will say she has a really good point. You know, my garage at the end of Henderson Road, a lot of it is in grow space. A lot of it is storage, you know, dirt transplanting space and drying space, which the drying room is huge and doesn't get used 8 weeks out of 9. So you guys have to think about it. You guys are going to make, you know, here it says, Asher, any structure utilized or built for a cultivation facility less than 1,000 square feet. Structures larger than 1,000 square feet will be required S, special exemption permit. So you're going to talk about a farm that's pretty much built for cannabis at the end of Henderson Road. It makes the most sense. I'm not even using like, you know, a lot of square feet to grow, but my building would be technically over 1,000 square feet. So then you'd have to then put an S on my stamp. So I have to get a special exemption permit, which means you guys would, you know, want to see financial records to go through my entire life for what? For a farm that makes sense for cannabis. So I'm just trying to let you know, like that suggestion of 3,000 square feet for a greenhouse, that would make a lot more sense. If you guys are trying to correlate 30 plants or 60 plants to, you know, 1,000 square feet, I would say take into consideration what it requires to be a caregiver and how much space it takes, even though you're not going to be using that space necessarily for flowering cannabis. And if you guys can understand that, I think you as a board can see how 1,000 square feet is honestly an arbitrary number, and the state has figured out a way where they've capped it based on the abilities of the personal caregiver. So I could grow 30 plants to the farm where I can handle it, but it's not going to be a Monsanto ever because it's only 30 plants. So please take that into consideration, because it obviously has a lot of caregivers see the flaw in it. We're not just getting angry for no reason. There is a real common sense reason here why this 1,000 square feet doesn't apply. It can be changed, or we can see how the state viewed it, because I think the state realized that it's such general thing, and so many people can grow in so many different ways, that they had to capture my because it wasn't, square footage didn't make sense for business purposes to invite business. So
I will say thank you for that comment. That was very clear and correct, and as well as some valid transitional points in there. Thank you.
I have a quick clarifying question.
Yeah.
So each adult who lives in the household, if you're a caregiver with your card, can do 30 plans, correct? Yes. Is there a two? You can go ahead. That was not clear.
What was that?
It's like, could you have like 5 people?
No, up to 2. And that's why the state has really thought about that. They really thought about
There's a reason
that.
why they didn't say that the college should pay for it.
So at most, at any given time, 60 plans.
Yes.
Plus the recreational and all that personal.
It just, as a clarifying point, that the reason that this is even being considered isn't because we're trying to like slip this in and just punish caregivers. It's because we're also simultaneously working. We're also simultaneously working on adult use ordinance, which does have it specifically as a separate thing that needs to be addressed. Now, for those two ordinances to work together,
Talking over here.
I understand.
It's not gonna bother us. It's not gonna.
If you'd like to have a conversation, you can do it outside the meeting, but we're having a meeting. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's really where this is coming in now. I'm completely open to changing numbers. I'm open to a discussion about the applicability of this with the other board members. I'm open to it. So we'll keep going with some questions. Mr. Ryan, you guys.
Has anybody here ever asked for a limit on the cultivation? Has anyone ever said, hey, we need to have cultivation be a votable item after we found out that it wasn't being mandated by the state?
So you said, sir, you have concerns?
I want to focus on it.
Yeah. What do you want to do with it?
I just want to make sure it doesn't get out of hand, cover the whole town of marijuana.
So the idea of having a state regulation that says you can only have 30 to 60 plants sounds like a pretty good.
Well, we don't have to have extras.
So,
my point. Well, the town, we want to, besides
do you want an item that you vote on that if it's no, then nobody can do anything? Because that's what happens when you make an item that people then vote on, and when they don't support it, it's going to be default no. So by the very motion of bringing this up, they're trying to attack the ability for a ton of people in this town and what they do for a living, what they do to get medicine for themselves, their families, their patients. And right now we have one person that's ever, actually, this is maybe the first time I've heard him really like speak up about it, but I've seen you here.
Well, I've talked afterwards and stuff with you.
So also, the state is crafting the medical marijuana rules, but they're leaving it up to municipalities who opt into the program to enforce these rules through the code enforcement office.
They're very specific about which ones are supposed to be done. And that cultivation.
I'm sorry, so the medical program, and by opting in through the municipality, is giving the code enforcement officer the ability to enforce these regulations that are set forth. There's no like state boogeyman that's going to come around, and that it hasn't in the past. We've had complaints both to the select board.
The code enforcement officer deals with building code before something's built and then open. They don't come and inspect this. It's not what they're saying in that. You're completely off base. The state does have a department, and they come around and do the inspection.
Right, and they have not been effective in the past at all.
It doesn't matter. You don't empower a code enforcement officer to go and do part of things that are not his job. He doesn't inspect for mold. He doesn't do any of that. He's a building inspector.
Right, and we're talking about specific building accessory structures here.
No, we're talking about use, land use.
Right.
And we're talking about the state telling you to opt in on certain things, and then you adding in an extra one because you have a personal vendetta.
There's no personal vendetta.
There is. I know the work that you do. We've looked at the FOAs. Like, you go into that office over there without any direction for the rest of the board, and you have conversations about marijuana with them, and then you come back without that being part of the initial thing that we actually view in those planning board meetings, and you develop these things.
So I guess what you're alleging is I'm co-conspirating with the selectmen against the town.
Well, you're talking about trying to empower.
Which is kind of crazy because if I've been in select meetings, it's been at the request to attend different meetings to give them briefings about things. And I've always informed the board of my conversations or things after. I don't need my. I don't need a
It's
vote.
not accurate. You haven't done that. You're lying right now. She can attest to it. I can attest to it.
Okay.
We got the Freedom of Information Act. Stop lying.
Attest to it.
Tell the truth.
About what?
Do you update the board before you go to the meetings on what you're going to do and after? Because you don't. It's not in the meetings because I'm there, and it's not in emails because we have the Freedom of Information Act button. So go ahead and just come clean now.
Okay.
And just own it. You don't use them. You go over there of your own fruition, and that's not how this works.
Right.
It's not how any of this works.
So I think if the board had concerns about this, they would.
It doesn't
bring
matter.
up to me, and I don't think
We
that's.
are the issue. We're not getting the information. It's supposed to be disseminated to the public.
Right.
Sherry's got
We're
something.
gonna keep moving on.
Sherry's got some
Yeah.
information.
Yeah, we'll
I just,
overstep that, huh?
and I don't mean to be rude to anybody, but this, I understand what you're saying totally, but this back and forth is just not helping caregivers get anywhere. But you also said that you're drafting adult use and you're trying to kind of make them work together. Adult use is not medical marijuana.
Right. No, not make them work together. What we're trying to. Let me think about how to word this. So there, eventually, in other towns, there has been zoning ordinance, specific zoning ordinance for the medical program if the town is opted in. There is also specific zoning ordinance for adult use,
Yes.
which is separate, they don't touch. Now, some towns have had an overarching marijuana ordinance, like Saco is an example, who has spelled out, regardless of medical use or adult use, a license program where people apply for licenses through the town to do it under the Home Rule Authority. And then as
Are
well
you
as...
talking about being caregivers, or are you talking about?
No, I'm not talking about being caregivers at all. I'm talking about like a separate ordinance that other towns have adopted.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, we're not really here to discuss.
No, we're not. No.
But Article 7 is kind of taking away rights of caregivers. Even if you put a higher square footage on it, I mean, I have 2 rooms, veg and flower rooms that are 600 square feet, so just that would be over that. So unless you put like, you know, a possibility of like 5,000 or 6,000 square feet before you need a, you know, any other kind of permit. Because I can grow 72 plants in one room if I had the space.
I think talking about 2 issues. One is we all like our lifestyle, and we want to see Parsonsfield gaining economically, but we don't want to lose all our forest land, or have McDonald's on the corner, or maybe 5,000-acre marijuana fields. You know, we don't want that. Right, well, who knows what's possible? That's how you work.
Listen, Brian, this is a debate.
I'm not fighting.
He's speaking.
Let me finish. We need to strike a balance that's going to meet the economic needs of the growers, but also going to be the other population that might not be growers. And what we're really looking at is we have to come up with different wording in an ordinance that doesn't limit. Listen, you stop listening.
I hear you.
No, you're not. You stop listening. I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to everybody else. We have to come up with ways, not limiting growth, but limiting how the property is used in a way that doesn't destroy our roads. Well, if you have tractor-trailer trucks coming in, I know you're not, but that isn't to stop somebody from buying a piece of property in Parsonsfield that might be 2,000 acres, and have tractor-trailer truckloads of marijuana coming in. There's a way to do it where you guys get to grow all you like, and we prevent rampant development.
The state prevents it.
You think?
That's what the state guidelines. Yes. Read the law.
Listen, we're not gonna have a back and forth.
LD 13.
We're not gonna have a back and forth. Mr. Ryan, if the board member's talking, please let him finish.
It's okay. I completely, I'm in your court. I want to see things happen like this. But we also have to balance out growth. And we need to have terminology in an ordinance that doesn't limit what you want to do, but will take into consideration what Dollar General type businesses want to do. And we have to find that balance. How do we get there? And we need your help.
Try to help.
Yeah, well, we need your help. Let's find that balance. That you guys
strip Article 7 right off the paper.
You want to have a living and
right off the paper, and I think there's many people in here that
yeah,
want.
but we need to have something not from the state, but that the town owns. We need to have an ordinance that the town owns. The state's too general. How can we trust the state? We can't trust a municipal association.
But they're very specific in the protections for a caregiver, non-retail caregiver. They are very specific that you should be allowed to grow medicine for people in your town. Local medicine ordinance, sovereignty there. They're very serious about that. And we are a town that is agrarian.
So who's to say, listen to the question. Who's to say a Dollar General business type comes in, well, we're a caregiver, we just want 3,500 acres.
Yes. They can have up to 60 plants if they both live in one building. That's it. That's what the state says, and that's why it's outrageous to have this votable item snuck on there, and it should be stripped. That's my only thing I want. I want Article 7 out of there today, and that's what most people here want. And I'm hearing, oh, we want to do what you guys want. So I'm hearing, no, I want to protect my idea that I've cooked up about empowering the
So you completely feel the way of life that you have, and what you're asking for is going to protect that and change.
There's no change to it. It's how we've been operating for 10 years.
Okay.
We've already been doing a decade. There's not
Well, I just
more
wanted
change.
to make those points because we don't want to have a Dollar General medical caregiving facility that's going to have 3,500 acres. And
they don't even exist right now.
Well, that would be a
well,
dispensary.
that right now.
Well, they can't because of the way the law's been.
Well, we hope.
I mean, I read LD 59, 5 times, but.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, how much do you need? Maybe.
I'll go ahead.
How much,
They're gonna get constructed.
well, I don't know what the enforcement is too. What if you have 10,000 feet and you just break the law? So maybe there isn't much enforcement, so maybe you're really technically down by, maybe that's in the back of your mind.
But the trick is the wording. We don't want to limit, we don't want to limit small operators and caregivers at all, but we want to have some kind of wording to be able to stop the Dollar Generals that want to.
Well, how about
they might have 400 little Dollar Generals.
We've heard some good suggestions, like 5,000 feet or something. Maybe there's another number that's
They have
appropriate.
200 Dollar Generals that are growing marijuana.
Listen, please, can we have order? So we can keep.
200 Dollar Generals would be in
So, yes,
He had an idea that might be appropriate if you went by the plan, for example, and you wouldn't limit the creativity, like this lady likes to grow a certain way, and then somebody else is more compact, maybe, that's another idea. You could, of course, we already have that law, 30 plants, but there's some compromise that's appropriate, probably. I understand where you guys come from. I want that protection.
There's protection.
All right, yes, sir.
All right, CJ Lamar, I just want to clarify that this only pertains, this special permit only pertains to the village, and the whole point of this limit after like 1,000 square feet is to prevent like somebody from coming into town, downtown area, and knocking down a couple buildings, like building a huge grow operation in like your downtown area. That's the whole point of this special permit, right?
Correct. Well, it's not. So, I think it doesn't. Let me go to Article 7. Yeah. So we're looking at the village in particular because it's such a small footprint. of what Parsons Field is. Like, you've got these two tiny areas out of these. Now, I understand we have an improved application, so I mean they're very focused on that one building and how that impacts things. And like I'm willing and open to change numbers, have conversations, see if this needs to be scrapped. I am, but that's the intent, is to keep that from happening.
They have to rewrite number 7. It's not asked for.
Okay, so yes.
Are you guys opposed to changing 1,000 square feet to, let's say,
No, you're
a number, like a plant number, just
Plant
like
number, 7 square
you
feet.
guys would have your own plant number, you guys can match
Instead of square
the state, and then also enforce, like, let's say, you know, if it's 30 plants per caregiver plus their 3 rec, each person or whatever, then you guys can say, okay, there's more than 66 plants per building, the state doesn't enforce their law, we will. So you guys are just as flexible when it comes to how caregivers want to cultivate, just like how the state came up with the solution of 30 plants. Why is it square footage? The state did away with that when it came to medicinal.
Yeah.
When it came to rec, they stuck with square footage. But they saw how medicinal was a different thing. So is it a total asinine idea for the planning board to switch over to plant count as opposed to square footage?
I don't know.
Why even have it?
So I don't think. I mean, we can definitely discuss that. Like I'm to speak to your point. You know, like I'm willing to.
State laws there.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the concern still remains valid though for the board. It's not so much how many plants you're growing. You know, whether it's 30 plants or 100 plants, we're looking at the buildings, like the percentage of this particular zone that would be used towards this endeavor, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just find it like to be redundant, like where the state has found the solution.
Right.
So like if we all, every caregiver in this room has to abide by the state, why not? Let's just go with what the state.
Yeah, to your point, this entire ordinance is redundant. The state has said that you guys are allowed to do this.
Right.
They have a program, you know, but they've left it up to the municipalities to provide a redundant level of oversight in the municipality. Your question,
We want to reduce the amount of pesticides used. Like the first 8 dispensaries, 4 of them were run by one guy who was using all kinds of illegal pesticides. Now you've got the problem of mold when you're growing. The best way to control mold is to space your plants out and have 2 or 3 feet between each plant and fans going. Anytime you restrict the square footage that people can use, you're forcing them to put them close together, which is increasing the amount of mold on the plants and increasing the amount of pesticides that you have to use to control the mold. And so you're going backwards, making it worse, not better. Just restrict the number of plants and let people use whatever. Ideally, they should be 5 feet, 10 feet apart, each plant with fans and air movement.
I think we need different criteria.
I want to just second that, because he is proper cultivating has a lot to do about proper space, proper planning. You don't want to be restricted by square footage. That is, in our industry, that's just a really bad idea.
Right. So, but it also bears the question, like, is the downtown Cedar Falls area the right place for that? You know, like, and that's why it's completely permitted in rural and farm and forest in those areas. You know, it's gearing a type of business or commerce to the areas where it's most permissible and makes most sense. You had your hand up, sir.
Yeah, Mike Shaw, Parsons Field. Yeah, going by the number of plants is fine, except it's subjective. Everybody gets an idea on how much room they need per plant. All this article doesn't ban anything, it just gives the town a little bit of oversight in a small area, in a rural area, in a village area, to make sure someone doesn't put in a 5,000 or 50,000 square foot, 100,000 square foot building.
It's already
a couple houses.
empty buildings.
Get your hand up, sir.
It's already there on Maple Crest. How long has it been there?
What's that?
100 years. The greenhouse? The greenhouse of Maple Crest.
The Lily Farm, used to be Lily Farm?
Christopher.
And then forever.
Yeah.
Massive throw, right?
Yes, sir.
It really is about just making sure that we're filling out buildings and looking out for the uses of them and making sure they're intact. The idea of trying to limit people that are the only growing business in our area from occupying the area that has the most vacant buildings, especially commercial siding buildings, is kind of making me wonder if you're not understanding what you're saying, like if you're looking out. And the idea that like you want to project into the future about like, well, we don't want 1 million of these in this area, like where is that on like gun shops or anything else? Like why is it suddenly the idea that our medical business is such a thorn to you guys that you need to feel like it might take over the village and it might actually occupy all these vacant buildings that we don't get any revenue off of and nobody goes by, and when they walk through they look at the paint peeling off the silly freaking moose on it and they think this place is collapsing in on itself. And here I'm watching you go to lengths to restrict the ability for caregivers to grow, when the state has more than reasonable restrictions put into place. And those restrictions are actually smaller than what we have been dealing with for a decade. The previous laws allowed everyone that's doing it right now to grow more. So the idea that you think some change is coming from this that is going to be negative is asinine. It's not. It's restricting us down already more. And now I need to hear a bunch of people who don't understand the industry try to defend the idea that you think we should be allowed to vote out the ability for an agrarian town. If there is any town, they should be using the max amount of freedoms the state gives you. It is a town that is the largest town in Maine that is a farming history. And if I'm not right about that, correct me. But I think that that is kind of showing where your drive should be. And that should be empowering growers to have businesses provide medical treatment to the people around it and keep these buildings actually occupied, not collapsing in on themselves.
Appreciate your comment. I would just like to state that one of our board members is a caregiver. He's been involved in this process from the beginning. And I'll admit myself, and I think every other board member would be willing to admit that, you know, this is not our industry.
We have the special exemption.
I'm sorry. So this is not our industry. We have done our due diligence by going and talking with different caregivers. We have reached out to municipal authority experts for ordinance to kind of weigh this in front of them and reached out for help. Now, I think the point that you're trying to make is that, you know, we're a bunch of people who don't know what we're doing, crafting ordinance. You know, I mean, honestly, I don't know what the expectation for the board is to go through like a 2-year program for us to all become like registered caregivers and then write ordinance based on that. That's
well,
not how it works.
Listen to the one member on your board that was a caregiver who said that cultivation should be protected and that the idea of a special exemption would be too cumbersome. That was literally in the notes. We can go back. So you got the input from, I would imagine, the most credible person.
None of these people
Well, you did ask me a question directly and looked right at me.
I didn't ask you a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. It sounds like you said you want me to go through 2 years of training. You're looking at me, you said you, that's directed to me, that's a question.
So again, this isn't helpful for anyone.
No, it's not. Strip it and stop doing the asinine nonsense that you're doing. Drop Article 7 like everyone wants.
Why aren't you willing to rely on the site plan review process? Why do you feel that you need more than that?
Are you asking me specifically or the board?
I'm asking the board. That's what I'm supposed to do, isn't it?
Anybody?
Well, no, I didn't hear what you said. Repeat that again. We second this.
Why aren't you willing to rely on the site plan review process? Why do you feel that you need to go further than that?
Well, I think some people feel that way. I mean, it hasn't been voted on, so.
No one's voiced that opinion.
Well, it's there.
So,
That's just.
I think that,
I mean,
in our workshops, like, we've taken the special exemption, which we initially like, had listed here and changed it to a site plan review. The specific concern for anything with an asterisk was protecting those zones with big structures from coming in, and that's why we as a board discussed a square footage disclaimer.
That was never discussed.
Never discussed.
I mean, am I wrong? Did we discuss that?
What
Square
was
footage
that?
disclaimer?
Discussed. Definitely not discussed. I don't think
No, we didn't say
The limit on square footage.
And it's oddly exactly what the CEO.
I'm sorry, listen, we're talking as a board here. Did we not discuss like a limitation on square footage?
I didn't discuss it, it just came up, it was like, is that something as a consideration, but we haven't even gone into detail on it.
I thought you said it was discussed after the meeting.
I was-
That's what you
I was on
said
that
20,
side
30
of the
minutes
table,
ago.
and
And it's exactly what the CEO said.
Something about 1,000 square feet.
I said that people have come up to me after meetings.
Come up to you.
Yes, and had concerns about it, yeah, but I'm saying that
I'm
after.
asking where it comes from. You're basically saying, I'm getting that it came
We're
from
supposed to
that.
know where all of this comes from.
Okay,
That's part of the rules.
If you look, like every one of these that has an asterisk is all 1,000 square feet. Again, it's not set in stone. We just,
So that's what we're trying to work on it, get rid of it now, it's a workshop.
This is not a workshop.
This is pinpointed. Listen for a second. This is pinpointed to my building. Don't say it isn't, JP. I'm getting tired of these meetings and dealing with this. If I have to lawyer up and take care of this, I will.
And we'll talk about the
This
CEO.
is crazy. This is absolutely crazy what we're dealing with to get a business into
Remove
town.
it. It's a workshop, remove 7, it's not asked for, nobody wants it. The only person here who wants to defend it is sitting at the end of that table, and he has talked with the CEO, who conspicuously also thought that this would be an interesting thing. So it seems like you and the CEO did some work, and that's why we're looking at it.
The
Strip
CEO
it
is not
like the
cannabis
town's asking
mountain with
for.
Parsons Field.
They're hired.
The CEO has no jurisdiction on cannabis in Parsons Field.
No.
Nothing.
And he has nothing to do with municipal opt-in either. He's not part of the conversation. Yet you have a conversation with him, and I read his words on here. And no one else on the board knows where it comes from. Interesting. Scrap it, let's be done with this.
My name is Amanda. I'm actually not a Maine resident currently, but I grew up in Parsonsfield. I'm over at Effingham, going to move soon. So I think that everyone's fear, maybe this gentleman over here, your fear might be that large facilities are going to be put up. But the reality of that is that with the plant count that is allowed, it's just not going to make sense financially for these businesses to put up all these humongous facilities. It's just not good business. So they're not going to be putting up, you know, extremely large
Oversight
facilities.
doesn't hurt.
What's that, sir?
A little more oversight, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, state has oversight.
Yeah, you know, I
It
understand
doesn't
that.
ban it, it just says they want to look at it.
But if you put up a huge facility, it's not financially smart. You know, you can't utilize all that space. So they're gonna stick with what is financially smart for the number of things that are allowed. So I think that we should just do away with that in general, because you can't really go by plan code, that's already
and then
regulated
you
by
point
the
out,
state.
obvious market on their building. There's already oversight.
All right, did you have something? All right. So, aside from Article 7, we have.
Just gonna do no work on it then? Despite the fact that people are yelling at you, you're not gonna do any work on it.
Okay.
That's a great job,
All
guys.
right, so how would you?
People want it on. Get rid
All
of
right,
it.
hey, listen, can I have order so we can get back to business? I'm sorry.
Now,
Going back to.
my business. You wouldn't let it happen here.
This is, anything that's in now is grandfathered, is that right?
So there are no, what do you mean by?
Well, if there are larger facilities that would be violation of this, I don't have one. would that be grandfathered?
Yeah, so as of 2018, December 13th, I think it was. Any facility that was operating like within a municipality, like a retail store, dispensary, or it's in Article 1.
Yeah, anything was already operating.
There's zero. Yeah, it's grandfathered, but we haven't had it. So
nobody. What he's trying to talk around is what he means to say is that whole line means nothing because nobody's ever been permitted. So just with the
Well, it isn't anything.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, but so what the state has said is the town has to opt in. Like we have to hold a special vote.
Yeah, I did see that.
Right, and so that's where this is coming from.
Or you could elect to not do anything.
Right. Yeah.
I see.
Is it possible to figure out, like Eddie was saying, how much space you would need to have, not have to use all the pesticides and so forth, maybe like 10,000 square feet, at least do that, and instead of 1,000 feet, and then anything beyond 10,000 feet, they would, at least that, if we're not gonna erase the whole thing. I mean, like if the state, who knows, the state could change their mind next week, especially if Bayer comes in and, lobbies them.
So I guess I'll put it to the rest of the board. Is anyone opposed? Well, does anyone on the board want to just see this scrapped, or you guys want to work through this? We'll go. What are we scrapping? We're talking about Article 7. Yeah, we'll go board member by board member, and then we'll go from there. So Nate, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that the state has it covered. I don't know if we need to particularly put that in there. I think that, if the state changes its law, you're gonna have to just go through that process. If all of a sudden they open it up to even more plants, I think, that is the time to then dive into cultivation in those areas, but it won't be at most 66 some odd plants. I'm okay with scrapping those.
I'm pretty much the same way. My concern is what Rick said, having enough space between plants and not using chemicals, especially if we're throwing stuff for medicinal purposes, we don't poison our clients.
I mean, I'm not concerned with the number of plants. And I guess my tendency would be willing to scrap it. But again, it's something that have to be addressed with state law changes. I think it just maybe the intent of this was to kind of get at specifically the structure, not entirely the use, so that the structure in a village district fits. That would be my only concern, regardless of this. Okay, build a new building in a village district, or whatever is appropriate. And I think, because to me, what I'm looking at in all of this, I don't care what the business is how it can impact and how does it fit with the land use zones that we have established. That in theory were established based on a comprehensive plan that was created in 1991 and is now being updated. And that's, I guess that's my long answer is I'm willing to do whatever, and I do think that 1,000 square feet is a small number. If we were going to keep it, I would want that number to be substantial because, again, my concern is, does a building going up in a village area fit, regardless of what's going on? I mean, and sometimes just a simple size of a structure may not fit, regardless of what's happening. So that's where I'm at on it, I mean, I wouldn't want to come back at it if the state laws change. I think at some point it could be inappropriate for a certain size structure to be put up for any village area. I mean, I only look at my own profession as an example. It's pretty regulated, and I'm a woodworker. I can't do my business where I live because it's light manufacturing. So, but if I did it in my barn as a small incidental home occupation, then and it wouldn't change the character of where I live, then I could do it, and no one would be the wiser. But if I put up a 40 by 80 shop and have my employees show up every day, running our, rotophase motors, and making all kinds of noise, probably not, it's definitely not acceptable. So, I mean, that's how I look at all of this. Is that building that's going to be built going to change that? And that's the only thing I'm looking at. Is it going to change the character of that zone? Is it appropriate? So, yeah, long answer. Either scrap it or it's got to be a pretty big number. But are we done with that part of it? Because I did want to get back to another question earlier with the Taylor City or the comment about, some of these things in like a place like Taylor City, for example. You were talking about earlier. I wanted to address that. I don't want to get off topic. I just wanted to talk about that.
No, it's like.
And I guess what I was doing, what I wanted to, is it all right if I kind of go off topic again? You want to stick to this?
Can I say one thing? All I want to say is that everybody needs to remember that village is a mixed use. It's not village residential, it's village, mixed use.
Yeah.
So which means businesses,
Absolutely.
and people that live in village residential need to understand that they could end up like with a Dollar General next door or across the street from them.
And I guess the other thing, I guess for me,
Not that I like it, but that's the law.
Going back to that, I guess that brings up another thought that I always had with this, and it's hard because it is its own thing. But I always try to look at, okay, how does this apply to other things? And that's where I can see in the village in particular, it becomes a concern because it is agriculture. I look at it as agriculture, right? And it can have all the same issues associated with agriculture related to potentially related to runoff, odor, all the different activities that are associated with any kind of agriculture or like raising animals, which isn't allowed in that district.
No, it's not.
So for me, that's the only thing I'm looking at is that business. But again, people are doing it in their houses. It doesn't matter. So at some point, if they're building up a structure that's beyond just a home use thing, is that now agriculture or?
We're talking about indoor use, right? Indoor use. I wouldn't want to see an outdoor use in town, in village residential, even though it's mixed use. Indoors, fine.
What's that?
I was just saying, if it's village, it has to be.
Right.
That's what I'm asking.
To answer your question, we're talking about an actual structure to grow plants, so it would be indoor with the structure.
Indoor, you can live next door and not even have any idea that it's there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to use an example.
Depends on how the person does it. I mean, you can be a respectful neighbor. It depends.
As long as someone buys the proper equipment, you won't smell it.
Right.
You won't even know it's there.
And I will say though, anecdotally, and this isn't like, even before I was on the board, I remember that was one concern that I've heard before expressed to me by people is, well, I don't have a problem with it, but I just don't want to smell it.
Right.
So, but I mean, that's understandable. I love raising pigs.
Yeah.
And I have. I would not want to live next to a pig farm. Because pigs stink. I don't like the smell of it, but I like the taste of it. So,
just before you get to the Taylor City thing, I'd just like to share my view.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so despite any allegations, like I don't have any qualms with any medical marijuana business going on. I don't. I mean, you guys obviously feel differently than I do. My concern strictly has been from an objective standpoint, from building use, and does it fit the character of the zone that it's going into, and just protecting that zone from outside entities that might exploit it. I think that Dollar General was a huge, and I'm not trying to compare Dollar General to medical marijuana. I just want to make that defining line. But I think that it was a wake-up call for the town that our ordinance could allow entities that might not be of popular opinion to come in and do business, even though the townspeople at the time said, hey, this is not what we want. You know, there was appeals after it got approved, and I'm not saying that that's the case with medical marijuana, but I am saying that any new entity and any ordinance that we write needs to make sure and take into considerations of the people that might not want that commercial entity to be their neighbor. It needs to provide that level of ordinance, or you can also call ordinance protection in that. Now, I'm not going to debate my opinion, if that's what you're raising your hand for. I'm just sharing my opinion on number 7 specifically. I have no qualms with scrapping this. If that's what the board wants to do, I'm fine with it. It is something that other towns have addressed, cultivation facilities, because they're accessory structures, either being used exclusively for and built for cultivation purposes. Now, I am 100% with the statement explanation that it's an inherent right for caregivers to grow their own product. That's what being a caregiver is. I support the medical marijuana program completely. It was one of the deciding factors for me to move to Maine. It was. And as we go on talking about ordinance, you know, that's where this came into play. So, to the other board members, I mean, that's where I stand. Did you want to give that?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, because I'm looking at the accessory structure definition.
Sure.
So that would only, wouldn't even really have an impact on it.
Right. Well, I mean, you are saying it is about you, that we're
No, it's about
you.
you.
It's not. Okay. So,
all right. So yeah, that's all. I guess this dovetails with what I wanted to kind of get back to what you're talking about. I think you were concerned. Were you talking about the retail stores, or like Taylor City?
All right. I know that there's people over in Taylor City growing pot.
Yeah.
And if you make it so that they can't do something because they're village residential and they're more restricted, they're going to vote no.
Okay.
When they're actually in favor of it. Because they're going to feel discriminated against.
So,
I haven't talked to any of them or anything, but I know that's what's going to happen.
And so you're talking about Article 2? When you were
I guess so.
Yeah, Article 2, which was...
village residential, it says
This
no.
is for medical marijuana retail stores.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few shops over there in Taylor City that are owned by the Taylors. And if one of them now or at some future time wants to put in a medical marijuana store and grow some pot out back somewhere legally, they should be able to do it without any more hassles than somebody in a residential neighborhood. Because it really isn't much different.
And I think when I was...
those people have no money, and there's always money flowing by them.
And I think when you look at this, and I think we need to clarify it, because it should be changed. It should reflect the same as retail in general. So we have ordinance for retail above 4,000 square feet, and ordinance for retail below 4,000 square feet. And after you were mentioning that, I kind of went through and was just trying to clarify that. And I think that would, if we just make that change, then it's in line with everything else. We're not saying you can't do it, but I mean, it follows our land use for every other type of business that's retail. So as long as we do that, I think we're keeping everybody happy. Because again, it has to do with the size of the building and the size of the operation in that village, in that zone. So I mean, are you guys hearing what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was a note I made earlier.
And so that would change Article 2, village residential, from a no to...
So I got to get back to our original table. That's what I was kind of comparing it to. This is what I'm suggesting that we amend this to. So Marion, what are we going to say? Are you talking? Is it related to this? You have something to add to this?
Well, read what it says, village residential, as the explanation in the front of the book, please. I didn't bring my book.
In the book. Okay. Yes. I'm trying to get back to that. Sorry.
Someone could do that. I would appreciate it.
Okay.
Village residential, the purpose of this district is to provide for residential growth and commercial uses appropriate for the village area. The district is intended to be compatible with the village district. The district provides for a mixed use of residential, commercial, and institutional uses.
Okay, actually I should have said village because, Ed, that's what Taylor City falls under, right?
No, residential.
Village residential?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you compare that to how it already exists for retail in our land use ordinances, okay, if you are in a village residential zone and you want to do retail business that's less than 4,000 square feet, that's an allowed use. You know, it's got to get a permit from the CEO. Okay, if you are in a village residential area and you want to do a retail business more than 4,000 square feet, it's prohibited. So to me, I don't see why this should be any different. Personally, I think it should be treated. It should be treated differently, right? Exactly the same. Right. And I think that's what I'm gonna recommend that we vote to making a change at some point for a final draft would be to just have it reflect exactly the way it does retail in general. Does that address? I mean, I think to me that's it shouldn't be different. I mean, it's retail. It fits. So. That was all I wanted. I just wanted to get back to that. That was valid, and I think that maybe that was not the intent.
We want to keep something in those stores. There's an antique, used clothing antique store there. There's Earl Taylor's old store. There's several other buildings there. It's like those people got no money, and this is a way for them to have a little cash flow. And the way you've got this written here now, it would prohibit it, and they're all going to vote no if you leave it like this.
Oh, it's coming out.
Yeah, we're gonna make it so that it mirrors what's already in the ordinance.
And the thing that bears like reminding as we go through this process too is we're not writing the law here. We're writing something for the people to vote on. Okay, but we're writing a recommendation that the people will vote on, yes or no.
And when he says we, that means all of us.
So
I've got to go. Thank you. I have another meeting. Sorry, guys.
We got one.
Yeah, I would love to know what the remaining time period looks like. So when we leave here, it seems that it's changed a little bit since the last time because there was just change. But we were looking at the dates. Obviously, Tuesday is your next meeting. What are the actions that are going to be taken on this Tuesday?
So.
Vote on it, right?
Yeah, well, our intent has been to vote on this. Now, the only monkey wrench that we've gotten from our last workshop was the deputy clerk pointing out that we couldn't hold this as a public hearing. We had to have a finalized draft to have a public hearing.
So there'll have to be a public hearing, kind of work.
There'll still be, but the idea is that we close
to like a public hearing.
Yeah, so 2 weeks later is as soon as we could do the public hearing, which would make sense to do on our workshop night.
But then there would be a vote on, then you have to do.
Public
hearing ends in a vote, or is it a?
No, the public hearing is conducted from us, and then we, as a board, pass this off to the selectmen. As a warrant article, am I right on this?
Yeah.
As a warrant article. Now, the select board is the one that will coordinate a special town vote. And whatever the dates that they pick are where it ends up being. Like, once we give this to the selectmen, it's their...
Yeah, sorry, going back. So that 10-day thing, that's...
Yeah.
Okay, all right, sorry.
So the 10-day thing, I think, is... The select board probably has to advertise it a minimum of 10 days before the vote is held. So there needs to be sufficient public notice for the town vote.
Right.
Same with the public hearing. When you guys set up a public hearing, there needs to be sufficient town notice.
So it's going on Monday, out on Wednesday? Is that on Wednesday? And on Wednesday, out on Monday? Were they advertising?
Yeah, so to get back to timeline, I don't think we're too far off where we were. It's just this can't, because of the process, because this is for ordinance.
May 9th or something?
We have to.
Yeah, I think before we were in May 4, I think now.
But I would say that once we vote, and I think our goal, right? And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to take. Once we vote, which ideally is Tuesday night, we're voting on something, so we want to try to get the changes put forward. Once we vote on that, two things happen. We give it, then we can have a public hearing on it, and then, but after that, it's like totally a select board thing. I mean, I don't know what power the select board has to reject something or say, well, we,
I don't think they can reject it. They are just the ones who determine the date of the special meeting. And that might be a budgetary thing too. So they might look at their budget to figure out when they set the town vote. Because there's money involved with the election.
Just clarifying things. You know, not to debate your opinion, but I can't let people believe that you're pro-cannabis when you actually went and spoke in favor of a moratorium for it, and that was one of those meetings that when I was still typing you guys, I know that nobody found out that that was being talked about. And then also Dollar General was not a failure of ordinances, it was a failure of the board because they actually granted waivers. So the protections are there, it's a matter of the board conducting itself in a way that enforces them. So those are just some clarifying points so that we don't all have some sort of miscommunication and think that you're some sort of bastion of medical cannabis when I stand up and try to push for moratorium. We need more time, many, many months of that time. So.
I read that.
What's that? Oh, okay. All right, Mary?
I don't think you guys made a decision on Article 7. I didn't see you vote. I'd like to go back and finish that.
Yeah. I don't think we can vote on it tonight today. No. We can just scrap it and then vote on the finalized.
Sounds like
I have to agree to scrap it.
That we did. Yeah.
Well,
I think we all said we'd scrap it.
I know, but you didn't really.
We're not going to vote on that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll scrap it. You know, we'll be voting on something that's a finalized or a finalized issue. Right?
That won't have this.
Then I guess you need to go back to number 2. That's the other one.
Right.
That you were talking about village residential.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's going to be changed to what?
That's going to be an R for village residential, and then for less than 4,000 square feet, anything above 4,000 square feet will be N.
Over 4,000 square feet will be what?
N? Is it prohibited?
It'll be the same as retail is in the ordinance. Any retail.
So anything above 4,000 is not allowed?
So in
village residential.
In village residential, nothing above 4,000 square feet is allowed. And in the village, anything above 4,000 square feet requires special exemption. Okay? And I mean, I'm going to recommend that's how we vote to change it.
I can't be here on Tuesday.
So, and then anything under 4,000 square feet would be an approved use for both. Would be R for both.
So, to review the articles that we modified. So, Article 2 has gone from a no to an R under 4,000 square feet, and an N for above 4,000 square feet. Article 3.
Well, yeah, and it should be special exemption under.
Special exemption.
So just to go back to that, in the village, if it's over 4,000 square feet, it's a special exemption. In the village residential, if it's over 4,000 square feet, it's not allowed. It's an N. And then they're both anything under 4,000 square feet is allowed in both. That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
It reads just the way it is. So if this table doesn't actually work, that we'll have to make a new
So maybe you'll have a double star and put in the legend just so people know that above 4,000 square feet is not allowed.
Yeah, they'll have to rewrite all that so it's clear.
And then in village, another triple R, a triple star that says that special site plan review or special exception.
Yeah, special exception.
Yeah, you're gonna have to add those.
So
that's what we're gonna do.
Just so I'm unclear. So you're saying that under retail business, more than 4,000 square feet, in village itself, you want to change that to an S instead of an R? Because
if it's more than 4,000 square feet, yeah. Although I don't know if we need to. We don't need to because if it's a retail.
It would stay R unless you could put a special, some sort of a thing next to it that says if it's over 4,000 square feet, it needs site plan.
I mean, on the one hand, you could. I mean, I don't know.
Well, so in the existing table of permissible use right now, the retail businesses in village, More than 4,000 square feet lists S. And that's,
Right.
yeah, that's.
So I would put an R because up to 4,000. Then I would put some sort of you know.
We're just gonna do 2 lines, one for
An asterisk
one
that
for-
says S for over 4,000.
We're gonna do 2 lines, there'll be one for above 4,000, just like it reads in our other tape, in our land use in the book. We'll just do 2 lines, one
So
for.
you're gonna do
one
an
for
R
above.
slash S?
It's gonna look exactly like it does.
There'll be another line on
So
it.
rather than just saying retail stores, there's gonna be retail stores over 4,000 square
Oh,
feet.
okay.
And
Yeah.
retail stores.
We're gonna word it just
Okay.
like.
That way works.
Only it's gonna have medical marijuana in front of it. Other than that, it'll be exactly like it is in the ordinance, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So does that impact their application? Or?
No, because they did 2,000, the retail spaces were
well under.
Were under like
Okay,
2,000.
okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure your square footage, I just wanna make sure.
I just want to maybe clarify something under the Article 2, under P. It says to sell harvested marijuana. It also should say to sell harvested marijuana and marijuana products, because just bud is not sold at a retail store.
So yeah, this was taken directly out of MRS Title 22, Chapter 58, like the actual verbiage from the thing itself. So you're saying that should be amended?
I think it should include marijuana products, because then the town will say, oh, well, you have oil here, so you can't sell oil. If it just says harvested marijuana.
Okay. So you think we should add marijuana products?
I do.
It's part of, but that's part of that article, it's part of the,
I just don't want it to come back and bite any character.
No, exactly. I mean, I think you're making reference to something, and I think it's included in what you're making reference to.
Okay.
But we need to have it written down on whatever they see, whatever the voting public sees, so they can understand that also means that.
I'll put in quotation marks in there next to harvested marijuana, or not quotation, like brackets. Also, marijuana products.
Medical marijuana products.
Yeah.
Medical marijuana products.
Medical.
So why don't we just kind of quickly, because it looks like people are getting.
Okay.
Anxious. Why don't we go
Jeff.
Hi, my name is Jeff Wright from Parsonsfield. I've heard several things. One about Dollar General. Of course, Dollar General got what they wanted from the very beginning. They got variances. They probably wouldn't have been built if the planning board just followed the regulations, but that had nothing to do with you guys. And if you're going to meet with the selectmen, is it going to be recorded or gone over, and they're going to have recorded minutes when this review goes to the selectmen? Or is it just going to be they meet with the selectmen and nobody knows what goes on?
Well, we're not going to meet with the selectmen.
And I don't see any of the selectmen or the building code wasn't up to here. I was just kind of wondering.
So your question is, how is it going to be recorded when we?
Well, I was just wondering if you're going to meet with the selectmen.
In general, or about this?
About this.
Okay.
Are they going to keep minutes?
The select board? I mean, that's their.
Yeah.
I can't require them.
I find the planning board to be recording now and having minutes.
Yeah.
After several years of planning, but I was just wondering if the select board was going to do the same.
So our suggestion to.
I just want transparency.
Yeah.
Here and there.
Our suggestion to the select board has been that they start recording and posting their meetings. They've encouraged us to, I guess, do the field work in all of this and get our program up and running, and they want to piggyback off of it for meetings to be recorded and available to the public. Now, when and if they do that, it is completely up to them. We've offered our space and coordination with Lindsay to do it. They haven't done it yet. So as far as their requirements for their minutes and such, I don't know. It's out of the planning board's purview.
And weren't we talking about again once we get this filming down and trying to find our next goal to try to find a way to
have a room.
Or broadcast, whether it's a YouTube channel or something, so that it's pretty easy, you know, so that now you can access.
Yeah, it's actually
easy.
We actually have a YouTube channel now.
Yeah?
Yeah, and if you go to the town website under meetings, there's a subsection that says video. You can click on it and you can watch the whole video of our past workshops, I think, from like January or no, October.
October.
Yeah.
We brought hair and makeup, so I didn't know.
Right. Yeah, all right. Yeah, Alex.
Is there any reason why the code enforcement officer or any of the selectmen don't attend any of these workshops?
You have to ask those guys.
Yeah.
You guys, I mean,
If anybody suggests attending to.
They've been invited to.
Code enforcement officers here, it's just there was one, I don't know why it's not in here.
Yeah, I think it's very like,
It's kind of strange.
It's weird, like how like they're not a part of the conversation.
Right.
You know, it's very.
I would encourage you to bring that concern directly to them.
Right.
Because I mean, we don't really have any.
Right.
We have no authority over them.
What do I look like? I look like a disgruntled jerk off who's just like, you guys don't show up for shit.
Because you're a citizen.
And then break it up.
You're a resident.
Especially select board, I don't know how it is in Newfield, but they're voted in.
So
Right, I don't understand why they don't really take an active role. They take less of an active role than I do at all.
Again, I think you should bring that to them. I mean, you're not, wouldn't be out of place for you to do that.
But then if I say something to them, like if I'm the one that says something, I look like an asshole citizen.
All we can do as a board, and we've been invited, not only the select board, the CEO to our workshops, but we've also reached out to, and I know you've gotten this email, to other neighboring planning boards, the police department, the fire department, who else? Emergency services, Saukview Rescue. So we've made the invitations out to try and solicit more.
Unfortunately, it's on us. But we can't come across the route, you know what I mean? They're like, hey, but there's an informational meeting coming up on medical marijuana ordinances. I personally would like you to try to make it so, as a town, we can go over this together.
Right. I mean, I don't know. If I was a selectman, I would feel the need to kind of be here for it.
I'm not a selectman. I'm on the planning board and I'm here, so.
Us as a crowd, I think they all suck. Because they should be here for this stuff. This is important.
You should, honestly, you should express your concern to them and don't.
I mean, I have, but then Rick is an asshole.
Yeah, I know, but we're not. It's not like we got some. I don't have a special power over them.
I'm glad you guys can agree with me, but we do. When we do say something, we just get called like assholes that have special interest. You know what I mean?
And I guess maybe they should be representing persons too.
Right. They shouldn't be representing us if they don't want to.
Yeah. We go through. Yeah.
I know I'll give a question, but I guess what I'm proposing is we just kind of like, can we just go through these real quick and make sure that anybody have any questions on any of the articles, or before you can wrap up. But Marianne had a question.
Yeah. Marianne, do you have a question?
Oh, I thought you were going to ignore me. Go on. In this past Tuesday's agenda for the selectmen that was postponed to next week, they said they were going to discuss the costs of that. You don't know anything about that?
The video thing?
Yep.
Yeah, so they didn't address it. When I asked following the executive session that happened, what happened with that conversation, they told me that they will address it down the road, but there's no budget to support it. So, yeah.
I was under the understanding that you guys had it in your budget last year. And have you been filling out budgets?
Have we been filling out budgets?
Yeah, yearly.
No.
No.
No. So we just.
That's the problem.
Well, yes.
It is.
And we just did an audit of the last 3 years of our budget. We found. What's that?
Of escrows.
Of escrow accounts as well.
That never got
paid. So we've identified.
That's been an issue, and the selectmen always say at town meeting that always told me I was over budget, and I told them they were freaking crazy.
Right.
Because I wasn't. So I understand that piece.
Right. And so, as far as our budget is concerned.
You have to write a budget in August.
Right.
And submit it.
Yeah.
You need to put the camera in there as something you want to buy.
Yeah. So, yeah,
And then town meeting will vote on your budget after the budget committee reviews it.
I don't think it's the intention that the planning board assume responsibility for recording all meetings across the town.
No, but it's just the same thing as like, I don't know if the planning board, it's still taken out of their account for, shopping guide, the little ad. It used to be just the planning board that placed the ad. And then finally, the selectmen finally added their stuff. But you may find that the planning board is still paying for that account.
Yeah, I know we are.
You know, it's like,
Yeah, so we've got an itemized cost estimate for the video recording, and it will be submitted in our annual budget for next year. The reason it got on the agenda was because I asked the select board to make this a standing budget item to ensure that when and if our secretary were to move on, who's graciously recording all these meetings for us, you know, it continues to do so. Just it's like in the past, like people have volunteered their equipment and their time to do that out of the graciousness of their hearts, which we appreciate, but we're also at risk by not owning that equipment of losing it at any time.
I know all that stuff.
Yeah. So does that answer your question?
Sort of, except for the fact that you don't share any of this stuff at board meetings when you meet with them. At the end of the meetings, you should be saying, I met with the selectmen, this is what we talked about, because they're clueless, as I was.
Okay. Well, I'll try and do a better job about that. I mean, that's all I can do.
Can we
get back to this?
I want to wrap this up.
Go for it.
So, everybody, Article 2, any other questions on Article 2, comments, thoughts, changes that people suggest? I mean, again, we're trying to draft something that is gonna work for everybody, hopefully, which is not possible, so. Right, Article 3?
Should we have a follow Article 2 as well?
I think that it should.
I mean, because it's just a retail store that happens to be licensed by the state, correct? I mean, and you can have more than.
I think I was going to suggest the same thing. I think it should pretty much be the same as Article 2.
I think
Article 3, make it pretty much read the same. As far as uses and all that stuff go, just like Article 2. Because again, it's a retail. It's retail. It should be addressed like retail. Yeah. Does that make sense? You guys? That's what I was going with. Anybody, any thoughts on that? Makes sense, right? Okay. So, however it reads for retail, it should read, I think, the same way. I mean, retail.
So it should read RRRSRNN.
It'll have 2 lines.
It'll have 2 lines. We've broken down between anything above 4,000 square feet versus anything below 4,000 square feet. You know what I mean? Just nothing changes other than it says it's a medical marijuana.
Village Residential says N on this.
And we're suggesting that it be just like retail. So, yeah. Whatever it says for retail, we're gonna change this chart to read the same way.
Whatever it says for
retail. We're gonna treat it just like retail.
Right.
Make
so
sense?
It says R.
Makes sense? Right. Okay. Moving on, Article 4.
Testing facilities.
Testing facilities. I know we talked about this a lot last time, and ironically not at all this time.
There won't be one probably in town.
Right.
Really not. Probably have to go out of caregivers, we're gonna have to go out of town because it hasn't been done all the time.
I think it just gives the town the ability to like at least have a okay, whoa, like where's this gonna go? How big is it gonna be, kind of thing, right?
The only thing I have is in the start piece. It's just English language. Lindsay, it should read, medical marijuana testing facility must be less than 1,000 square feet, okay?
I didn't write this.
Hmm?
I didn't draft this.
No, I'm just saying,
Want me to make a note of it?
put it in there so that the next time when you, because otherwise.
So rather than
still
less than, you say must be less than 1,000?
Well, it doesn't make sense. Any structure utilized to build for a medical marijuana testing facility,
Less than 1,000 square.
I guess. Maybe not. Sounds good to me.
All right. But as far as what's the meat of it, substance of it, moving on, Article 5, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 1. It's pretty much the same. And Article 6. To me, it was the biggest thing I was going to do was that stuff. It should just be like all get filled out in our ordinance, right?
Very good. All right, so, any final questions, comments, or concerns?
I have one question, I might have been out of the loop. When this first started, it was gonna deal with medical marijuana and then personal use too. And it's boiled down to just this for now.
So we're focusing on the medical marijuana piece. The adult use or recreational marijuana will have to be a separate ordinance that the town votes on. Yes.
Okay. So it'll be like this, but specific to recreation.
Yeah, I just thought when it first started, we were dealing with them both at the same time, but probably just got too convoluted.
Yeah, I think there's too many caveats between the two programs. So
very good. Yeah.
That way we can have.
I understand.
I mean, we can as a town work on our ordinance now, but there's no opt-in thing right now.
We're just trying to get ahead of it, start that process, so we're not here, like with this. I mean, we're starting on our back foot.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fine. Just wanted to make sure I was on, knew what was happening.
Chris Foster, Parsons Field. I am a patient. So basically, the medical is pretty much completely different than recreational. So that's why we're doing two different.
Correct.
Boards, and
that's
why we have a specific medical program.
In the state, I mean, when the new law is passed, and then the state basically, they finally got their act and
right.
And by the way, once this becomes, it's de facto moratorium on all of these until you actually take action, opt in, and create regulation and ordinance for it. So that's why we're doing this.
Right.
That's the other choice.
What's that?
You have the choice not to opt
Right.
in as a town.
Exactly. Well, and that's what will happen, the way this is structured. I mean, each one of these things gets voted on, and if it gets voted no, then the town's not up. That's an opting out of that
particular
specific use.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean a variation of that same thing can't come back later and be voted on if it's voted no. The most challenging part of us making this recommendation is to try and find a middle ground to where the town will say yes to these specific zones. Like it being allowed in a zone that somebody might not be happy with, in itself, they might fully support retail stores, but they might look at it and say, I really don't want to see it in light industrial, I'm going to vote no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not being voted on as a whole, it's by individual, I just noticed that.
Each separate article.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay. I'm a little slow today.
What happens if somebody votes no on one specific article? Do you go back and revisit it and try to redraft it, or
I guess that's over.
I don't think
we just.
There is
It
an
depends
ordinance.
on what happens, if the board wants to take on that endeavor at the time. Anyone can do a warrant to the selectmen with a revision.
This is something that kind of had to happen, so we were given the task of doing it, but we can't just say, it didn't let me start over again. This is the process. So if one of these things gets voted down, and you're in a position that you want to see that happen, you're probably looking at having to get a warrant article going. We can't just be like, oh, it passed, let's do it again. I mean, it's not a try it until you get it right kind of thing. I mean,
So if it is voted no on one of these articles, say it's like retail stores, so if somebody votes no on a retail store, then it's just no.
well, if the majority, I mean, not something, but yeah, the votes, I mean, there's going to be a vote and people will show up, and it could be 56 people, like at the last municipal election, it could be 100 people, it could be 90 people, who knows? Maybe it'll be like a gubernatorial election, it'll be 900 people voting.
Or it could be like a town
These decisions can get made by, could be made by 10 votes easily, so you never know. But they're all broken out individually, so they have to, the votes would have to go everything a no in a majority for none of this to happen. Which I have no idea how this, because the thing is, when you're in this process, you only see people who are involved or care or impact. I don't care whether it's this, whether it's anything. So,
or against.
Yeah, we'd have no, all we have to gauge by is, a dozen people. And honestly, that's it. There's no crystal ball, no idea. There's a lot of quiet people out there. A lot of quiet people out there that listen, pay attention, and all of a sudden, they and 20 of their friends show up.
I just want to know what happens after that, like.
Your warrant article. After that, if you want to create an ordinance, it's just like any other ordinance. I mean, you can put a warrant for any ordinance you want to make, for anything. You can get, if you get a warrant, it's got to go before the town. You get the signatures, you follow the process. So, okay. All right. I make a motion to adjourn unless there's any other questions.
A second.
All right. Any other questions?
So when's the next meeting?
We're meeting Tuesday.
So we're meeting Tuesday. We'll be doing a vote on the finalized draft, and then we'll set the earliest date that we can for a public hearing.
Thank you.
And from that public hearing, it's going to be transferred to the select board for them to institute a special town vote.
And that's totally up to them. I mean, they can, because there's a financial, there's a cost. There's a cost of doing it. I don't know what the.
What day of the week do you guys think that public hearing is going to be?
What's that?
What day of the week do you guys expect that public hearing to be? I know you guys don't have a date finalized, but are you guys shooting for it to be a weekday or?
A night or a Saturday?
It'll be either a night or a Saturday, probably. Right?
Yeah. I don't know right now.
We'll look at calendars.
I'm just concerned that I have a wedding to go to on the weekend of the 11th. My brother's getting married, so if I can't attend that, is there any way I can see that?
It'll be video.
Special.
Yeah. This will be on the town's website as well.
Okay.
So
we are video.
Yeah.
Planning board's trying to do everything it can.
Definitely tell them that sucks. If I could have any input, I would say let's try and make that a weekday for the weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, we chose a weekend because we probably have a good appetite.
I hear you, and I honestly would never be opposed to weekends. I have a feeling that it's going to be in about 2 weeks. That's in about 2 weeks. So that's really important.
And the public hearing is a time. At that point, we'll have voted on what we're going to submit as a draft. So I would encourage people at the public meeting to be addressing the board, but also the public.
I think that's right.
If those are the people that you want to start interacting with and saying.
That's why I'm so concerned. I'd love to come prepared to know what you guys can vote on, like ethics and educational points. If I can't attend that, I can speak to somebody else or I can make
So what we vote on, right? At this point is whatever changes.
Yeah. So after we vote during this next meeting, the finalized draft, we'll put it on the meeting notes. An agenda page for people to open and view. So you'll have this digital form completed, finalized, voted, and approved by the board. The earliest possible public hearing date we could probably do would coincide with the. I'm just spitballing here because I don't have a calendar. Would coincide with the workshop, the standing workshop that we have set up. I think that's like May 9th or something, right? 7th, yeah, because that's like 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks after the after the meeting, which we will meet our public notice requirements. I'm not saying it will be that night, because we, as a board, could decide on a different day. I'm just saying that's it right.
Try not to make it the 11th. That's all I'm saying. No, just for you.
Right.
Just so you guys know.
So, yeah, all those in favor of adjourning the meeting? Get a second? Aye. All right, this meeting, our public information meeting is adjourned. I appreciate you guys coming out and your participation.